Hello, and welcome to Locutors of Trek, the podcast where we talk about the people, places, and things of Star Trek. So, replicate yourself a Romulan ale or your Synthos selection of choice and join us far beyond the stars.
Locutors of Trek.
Program initiated. Enter when ready.
Greetings. It's me, Dave.
And I'm Davan,
and we are Plain Simple Tailors.
your hosts for this evening.
So, last week, we finally achieved an escape trajectory for the time loop we were stuck in.
It's good to be free.
We said we wouldn't mention it again, but that is the problem of loops. So,
And if you're here with us, you have now achieved the second shap.
congratulations, many shappy returns. Now, our theme for this week is time travel.
While it's fresh in our minds.
Indeed. We're going to try and cover as many aspects and varieties of time travel as we can think of, and find stuff to talk about.
Yeah, well, why I think time travel is a fun topic is it's time travel.
Well, yeah.
But also the different ways in which Star Trek has gotten around the difficulties of time travel as we understand it with our current understanding of science.
Sure.
There's some really interesting ways they go about it, and some of them are very close to actual theories, and some are just slight little twists and variations on them. It should be fun to get into, I think. Before we get into our main theme, though, our top 5 one-off characters.
Ooh.
In descending order, or ascending order.
So from 5 to 1, or number 5 to number 1.
Ascending order.
Ascending order. Okay, that's great. This I found a bit tricky, because some of my favorite characters do appear more than once, but when you narrow it down to one-offs, you get a really interesting list of people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm sure I have not, an exhaustive list in my head.
We'll start with number 5.
Number 5. All right.
Number 5.
Do you want to... All right,
I can start if you like.
Sure.
My number 5, I went with Kashyyyk from the Voyager episode Counterpoint.
Okay.
He may have been my favorite foil for Janeway that they had in that series. They had good banter. And funny scenes where he would be in Janeway's quarters listening to music and invite her to join him. Join me in your quarters, Kat.
The use of music in
or
that
your ready room, I guess.
The use of music in that episode is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Because the form and structure of the music is really dynamically sort of linked to the form and structure that the story is taking itself,
And he had a fun story arc where he joined Voyager and acted as if he was trying to escape his society due to their prejudice against telepaths. And he tells Janeway about a story of how he had to harm telepath children or take them into detention or something like that. And she plays as if she's buying it, but he's actually planning to betray them at the last minute. And she has a plan in case he's going to do that. But he brings up the same story again about the children, but he's just like, no, but what it taught me was that telepaths are dangerous. I took the opposite lesson of the one I told you. He was an interesting character, and he sort of made that episode. And he just always been very memorable for me, and one of my favorite Voyager episodes.
Yeah, well, he hides by showing up, which is an interesting maneuver, And he does it very well and very charismatically, which, not every actor would have carried the part off as well. Not every member of his species would have played the part as well either, because that character has some really interesting...
I forget the actor's name, but he's good.
Yeah. Oh, a great, long-running, long-working character actor. Now, my number 5 also comes from Voyager.
Okay.
And this guy's not necessarily a character I peculiarly enjoyed, but the story itself was so morally challenging that he sticks out in my mind, and this is Tuvix.
Oh, Tuvix! Wow.
The ill-fated transporter scrambling of Neelix and Tuvok.
It's a tragic story.
It's sad, and the story starts out with this sort of very relaxed opening. Tuvok and Neelix are arguing about sort of their respective views on life as they're gathering some sort of herbs or plants that Neelix is interested in while Tuvok is scanning a planet. And then something goes wrong in transport, and this other guy is created. And they do a very good mixing of the two. He's a kind of a poised character, but emotional, very empathetic, but also extraordinarily sort of intelligent and pragmatic.
Reminiscent of a Trill symbiote joining.
Yeah, in many ways, sort of the best qualities of the two sort of coming together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the moment on the bridge in the final act of the episode where Tuvix realizes that no one is going to save him.
Yeah,
is just
it's a heartbreaking
gut-wrenching. And in some way you can agree with the crew
who just want their friends back.
Who just want the people back that were there before the accident.
And they're Starfleet. They see a lot of weird accidents and things.
Yeah.
And to them, this is still just an accident in progress that we haven't fixed yet. As
Precisely.
Much as some of them, like Cass, I guess, had got to know Tuvix, but especially Janeway, who just wants to fix this accident.
But you really see that in that moment, she does something that we see several captains do at various moments, but this one is just really powerful, that she really hardens her heart deliberately so that she won't crack and not go through with it. Like, you see her doing that in her face during that scene, and it's an extraordinary piece of screenwriting. I think it's an extraordinary piece of acting on all of their parts. But the story itself resonates inside, the world that the series conjures as an event that, you can see some repercussions of that going forward, because the way they both treat enemies and the way they treat new life forms they encounter does shift subtly after that.
Mm-hmm.
They're both more and less willing by times to engage that question of the Prime Directive and that respect for the infinite diversity of the universe that are their founding principles. And in some way, they contravene that, at least in a provisional sense, in respect to Tuvix, even because he is kind of a provisional being,
Mm-hmm.
He's like this, as you said, this moment between the creation and the resolution of an accident in transport.
Okay, let's go to number 4. My number 4, Berlinghoff Rasmussen.
Oh, that great grifter in the sky.
From the season 5 episode Matter of Time of TNG.
Mm-hmm.
What is going to come up a lot in my list is the actors that play a lot of these characters. So I feel bad that I can't remember the actor that played Kashyyyk. He's really good. But Berlinghoff Rasmussen, played by Canadian actor and one of my favorite actors, Matt Frewer, Max Headroom himself, the unfriendly neighbor in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, one of my favorite movies as a youngster.
Indeed. Oh, yeah.
A young cadet.
One of the classics.
One of the
classics of Canadian cinema, that man.
But Berlinghoff Rasmussen is claiming to be a historian from the 26th century, and he comes aboard the Enterprise to view a certain moment in history that is about to happen on Panthara.
Well, the crew Geordi at one point speculates that maybe what he's after is to witness the mission on Panthara 4, because at one point Berlinghoff comments that not much is known about Data's involvement, because Data's been asking him how long. I think at one point in the episode, Data asks him how long he survives. And of course, Berlinghoff plays coy.
He asks Data strangest questions. Can you remove that Data? But you come to realize it's probably just because he wants to steal it. So he's actually a time-traveling thief from the past and not the future.
Yeah.
Because he's actually from the 22nd century or something like that.
Yeah, I think he's from New Jersey.
New Jersey, and a time traveler from the 26th century did actually crash land in Jersey, and he stole the ship. Good for him. Managed to find his way to the Enterprise. It's a good place to steal stuff if you can actually get away with it.
Sure. Well, and his total glee. When you see him left alone in various moments, it's just like, oh, it's too good to be true. I just love watching Matt Frewer's face, honestly.
Berlinghoff Rasmussen.
So number 4 for me, I've talked about him before, but he's definitely one of my favorite one-off characters. This is Tam Elbrun.
Tam Elbrun.
The Beta Z, who from birth was fully developed telepathically, and so has had problems interacting with others because he has both filtering problems and he gets easily emotionally overwhelmed because he accesses. It's like he's always not only just telepathic, but he's always deep scanning, you know, because he sees right into the center of people right off the bat. And he never can't. And it's one of those things that I think, you know, once he sees into you and he can't unsee it, he can never look at anybody the same way anyone else can. His rejoicing at the kind of solitude, but the solitude of the vastness of exploring Tin Man's consciousness, I found a really beautiful kind of requital of this theme of infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
Good character, played by the actor who played the mayor on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Also true, yes. Yeah.
Can't remember his name either. That's going to be a theme in this list, actually.
People we will not name for you.
No, actually, I know the next three. We're doing
Okay, all right.
All right.
Who's your number 4?
My number 3.
Have you said your number 4 yet?
Yes, it was Berlinghoff, Rasmussen.
Oh, I thought he was your 5.
No, that was Kashyyyk.
Oh, right, that's right.
So
I'm really good at lists, as you can tell.
Dave's very good at lists. I'm going to take the reins on this list until we get to number 1. My number 3, played by another actor I really like, a Canadian actor, Stephen McHattie, and that is Vreenak, Senator Vreenak.
Vreenak. Oh, yeah.
From one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek ever, In the Pale Moonlight.
Yeah, yeah.
Of all the characters on this list, he's the one that makes me the saddest that we only got to see him once, because Garrick blows him up, of course.
Oh, but I mean, if he could have been a character on that season before they blew him up, amazing.
It would have been amazing, because Stephen McHattie played the perfect Romulan. He just has that smile, and you know, he's very angular, and just it works well with the haircut. And it's one of my favorite scenes in all of Deep Space Nine. Is in this episode, they're trying to fool him with a fake holoprogram.
Yeah, that the Dominion is going to invade the Romulan Empire, right?
Yeah, but it's a fake. Oh, that's the famous line. It's a fake.
It's a fake, yeah.
But my favorite scene is when he and Sisko are just sitting in Sisko's meeting room, and he's drinking the replicated Romulan ale. And he's talking about how it's a fake. He tastes it, and he's just like, it's an obvious fake. And he doesn't even know they're trying to fake him with the program, obviously, but he's talking about something they're trying to fool him with already. He's trying to fool me with this drink, but it's not real Romulan ale. And then they continue to talk, and he takes another sip, and I think he surprises himself, and he says to Sisko, you know, it really is a good replica. It fooled me for a minute, but only for a minute. And it's the perfect lead up to the final act of that episode.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, that episode, again, kind of like Counterpoint, but maybe to an even more elevated degree, is structurally just about perfect, right? From those moments with the small thing that sort of points to the larger, you know, this Romulan ale that points to this hollow simulation, but also, you know, the way in which, as Sisko is narrating what's going on, you know, he's removing layers of his Starfleet uniform. All of those pieces that visually, gesturally, dynamically, interpersonally sort of cue us that there's this deeper motion happening in this episode that we're just really not aware of until it happens. It's absolutely brilliant.
It's an incredible work of art, that episode.
Yeah. So my number 3... You know, we're doing a lot of interesting mirroring here. My number 3 is also a Deep Space Nine character.
Okay.
Who has, for most of his life, resisted the soulless minions of orthodoxy. Elias Geiger.
Oh, Geiger.
Who wants to entertain your cells and make you immortal.
A humanitarian, really.
Yeah, from the DS9 episode In the Cards. And, you know, the whole series of trades that Nog makes, you know, are wonderful. The discussion of currency and the economics of Federation citizenry is amazing at the start. You keep it under your bed? Anyway.
It's like, why are you dealing with us? It's like, oh, I found that you weren't working for the soulless minions of Orthodoxy.
It's so good. That final scene with Wei Yun. When they're negotiating, and Wei Yun is just absolutely buying what Geiger is laying down. He's just beautiful.
Oh, I could have watched those two have a conversation for 45 minutes.
Oh,
It could have
man,
been the whole episode.
Listen, calling on you two to make, just some kind of a YouTube thing in the tradition of Alone Together. Come on, you guys, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Please, Jeffrey Combs. But yeah, Elias Geiger is certainly one of my favorite one-off characters.
That's a good one. All right, my number 2, also from Deep Space Nine, but I think is the best episode of the first season, Duet, and that would be Maritza.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Or Galdar Heel? No, it was Maritza.
Again, another character who disguises by showing up or hides by showing up.
Yeah, maybe I have a thing for that premise. I don't know.
Yeah.
Played by the actor Harris Yulin.
Another great character.
His changes of personality, his changes of delivery. 1 minute he's crying, 1 minute he's yelling, next minute he's, why am I here? I didn't do anything, I'm just trying to get to Bajor. From one scene to the next, he's just a completely different person. It just sticks with you. Incredible episode and incredible performance, and his chemistry on screen with Kira.
Mm-hmm. Or and with Sisko, for that matter.
And with Sisko.
Sisko's got some great moments in that episode.
Mm-hmm. And his scene at the end, where he just finally comes clean and he breaks down and he's crying and how guilty he feels just because he was there and he allowed himself to be there and not do anything to stop it. And it was the first episode and first time Kira ever had sympathy, I think, for a Cardassian. But it's the first episode that really shows some complexities in the Cardassians, not just as villains, but or at least as far as the occupation force.
And I think if she hadn't had that experience with Maritza Darheal, some of her other very profound encounters with Cardassians later on, I think, would have been completely impossible. Like you're right. He really moves something in her that can't go backwards after that. So we're on our number 2 dudes now.
Number 2.
Okay, great. I've kept track of this brilliantly. So my number 2 guy is also a DS9 character from the episode The Magnificent Ferengi.
Okay.
Eliminator Lek.
Oh my God, Eliminator Lek.
I love Eliminator Lek so much.
I don't care for Latinum. He's not like other Ferengi.
I'll bet you it's Eliminator Lek is the reason the Ferengi showed up the way they did in Enterprise. He just opens a door in the Ferengi presentation that's just very different. But there's not much that cracks me up more than seeing those Ferengi running up and down the passages of Empok. Everybody back to the airlock. Oh, man.
No, we don't need anybody eliminated. Then why did you call an eliminator?
What a great line. There's another wonderful appearance by Jeffrey Combs as Liquidator Brunt as well.
Of course. Yeah. And a lot of great reoccurring characters. I really like Cousin Gala as well.
Oh, yeah.
And Moogie.
Moogie.
And that episode also has Iggy Pop as a vortex.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Okay, I guess that brings us to number 1.
Yeah.
Well, mine is from a movie, and again, played by one of my favorite actresses, if not my favorite actress. That's Lily from First Contact, played by Alfre Woodard.
Yeah, what a great character.
Really funny, great foil for Picard.
That scene in the observation lounge between them is awesome.
Yeah, you broke your little ships.
Yeah.
They just made fun of him, basically. He just has this big dramatic moment. Picard finally yelled and broke something.
Exactly. Starting a long line of Jean-Luc Picard takedowns to become an art form in his own series.
It's true. But
oh, man.
That's my favorite of the TNG movies, and I just always loved her character. Cochrane's great. There's a lot of great characters in that movie, but...
Yeah.
Oh, and of course the classic, we're not members of the Eastern Coalition. Bullshit! Like, that's not very reasonable. Had some diplomacy here.
Would you like to negotiate a bilateral trade? Can't hear beneath Momo 10.
You see, we're from the future.
So my number 1 all-time favorite one-off character is played by a quite experienced Star Trek actor, but this, I think, was his first appearance. The great Mark Leonard. as Romulan captain in the Balance of Terror.
That is a good one.
In another time, Kirk.
It's a nice deep cut, Dave.
Oh, God. One of my favorite episodes in any Trek series is the Balance of Terror. It's just brilliant.
What a great role to get to play, too, in a single guest role.
Oh, it's so full. And it says so much about this foe that has been, deliberately left enigmatic for much of Trek's sort of progress, right? When he talks to his sub-commander about this this being sort of the nth war they've been involved in. That they were in wars way out the other direction for a long time, and now they're on this side. The way in which it sort of translates submarine combat and that genre of films, which was really popular, especially...
It's The Hunt for Red October.
Yeah, and I forget what it was riffing on, but it's a classic submarine movie that had come out a few years earlier.
The Enemy Beneath.
Oh, yes, thank you. But they translate it into the logic of sort of the free fall of space. It just, the use of the comet and everything, it's just a brilliant piece of science fiction, taking itself seriously, but not sort of getting bogged down, right? It's got great pace, it's got great action, it's got tremendous suspense, a lovely nod to the insanity of nuclear weapons in the center of the episode. It's just, the whole thing is just a tight run thing from start to finish.
So what you're saying is Sarek is not your favorite Mark Leonard role in Star Trek?
Sarek's not a one-off.
I was trying to trap you there. Trying to get a hot take.
Gotcha.
We got to sell this podcast. We need some zingers.
Number 5 will astound you.
Number 5 will astound you. But we'll never get to number 5. Well, that was a fun list.
Indeed.
So now, are you ready for a lesson?
Yes.
In business?
Oh, teach me, I am destitute.
Eternal destitution is at your door, Dave, but I am here to help you.
Thank you.
Dave's a keener. He's not coming into this class, completely unawares. Exactly. Dave's giving the thumbs up. You can't see that, but
I'm a master.
He's quite enthusiastic. So in the last episode, Dave happened to touch on our lesson of today when he said, once you have their money, you never give it back. Now, Dave, if you could reach under your seat there, I think you may find something. It's a $20 bill there. Could you hand that to me, Dave?
Yes, of course.
Okay, Dave, now you see why you need today's lesson.
No. Oh, you have my money now!
No, you had my money and you just gave it back to me.
Oh, I thought you were going to never give it... Well, you're not going to give it back to me now, are you?
No.
Okay.
No. But perhaps I can tell you a story that will help you remember this for next time.
Okay.
Something I learned in my 2 semesters at the Ferengi School of Business in history class. I had a professor, Professor Sack, and he was from the village of Noi on Ferenginar.
Ahoy.
And there was a legend, he said, in the village of Noi, the legend of a shopkeeper named Ob. Ob was a very fair man, always had finest quality goods. His prices were fair. His scales were incredibly accurate.
Sounds like a great guy.
This is a tragedy, Dave. This isn't a heroic tale.
Oh.
No.
I'm not listening right.
He was, needless to say, the least popular man in the village. You see, one morning, a traveler from the distant city of Korpa came into Ob's shop. He bought some beetle snuff at a fair and reasonable price, mind you, and then went on his way. You don't want to run out of beetle snuff on the road. No. Consider that a side lesson. That one's one slip.
You almost said free there.
Shh. I'm giving the lessons here.
Automatic defense procedures initiated.
And then Ob found out that the traveler had overpaid him by half a strip of latinum.
Oh my.
This disturbed Ob very much, and he was determined to make restitution to this traveler.
Sounds like real Starfleet material to me.
So Ob went after the traveler so that he could return his half strip of latinum that he had been overpaid. But on his way to Korpa, Ob was set upon and murdered.
Wow.
And those assassins were hired by none other than the traveler, whose name was Greb.
Set up!
No, it's a lesson, Dave. Wanting to make an example of the foolish Ob, the people of Noi buried him with the half strip of latinum he so desperately wanted to return, but it was stolen out of his hand. Shortly after the funeral, Greb married his wife and took over his store, where he made a fortune overcharging his customers for inferior merchandise. So again, once you have their money, you never give it back.
Never give it back.
Now, Dave, if you will look on the other side of your seat, a crisp $20 bill. Could you pass that to me, Dave?
Huh? No. I didn't find anything there.
Lesson over.
I win!
So, time travel.
Time travel.
But before we jump right into it, why don't we have a technobabble?
Okay.
Okay, so time travel, before we get into the Star Trek interpretations of it, why don't we talk about the science of time travel?
Right.
And we could begin with the very well-known analogy given to us from special relativity about the twins.
Sure.
One twin leaves Earth, the other stays on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
He travels close to the speed of light and then plots a course back to Earth where his twin had aged. He has aged very little at all. So it's like traveling forward in time.
In a sort of dilational way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I mean, other ways of looking at that under relativity would look at what are called space-time vector graphs, right? And these would take a sweep of space-time vectors, so not particularly, so right, space and time together, and the cone that would sweep out from the present is sort of basically all available events, right? But if one were to move somehow faster than the speed of light, or really the speed of causation, then you're moving along the slope of space-time would also end up moving you along, would not just move you in space, would end up moving you in time, right? In perhaps accidental directions or, forward or backward.
When you take space and time and you weave them together,
right,
it sort of changes things, and you get wormholes and things like that as well, where you can connect to points in time. As we see in Deep Space Nine, that's something Star Trek will use. The Prophets are keeping that together, though, because the unfortunate thing about wormholes is they would immediately collapse on either end, creating a black hole.
One of the troubles with some of the math around the similarities between black holes and wormholes seems to be that either the wormhole could end up in sort of a different universe, or the information that's there could simply be lost, and that seems to be completely disallowed under quantum physics, which sort of brings us into a different realm of problems again.
And then there's something also called a closed time-like curve, which is this theory of, now, I think there's a couple of ways to go about it, like taking an infinitely long, dense object and spinning it really fast and creating like a vortex. But I think there's also theories of turning a sun into negative energy and do it that way. But where Star Trek touches on that idea is that seems to be what they're playing off of when they do those fly around the sun.
Oh, yeah. Sure. In sort of
time travels in Star Trek 4 and stuff like that.
Right.
The theory on that is if your return point is the same as where you left it, you can do it. Because it's like Stephen Hawking says, time travel is probably only possible in so much as it doesn't create paradoxes, because that just throws a loop into causality and cause and effect. So you can see where Star Trek plays off that too.
Well, yeah, and I think in some ways they like to take those marginal problems, those problems which would occur sort of on the margins of what you could do with this, and run with those as really good story material.
That's almost something to be ignored for good storytelling.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, some of
sci-fi loves a paradox.
World attempts to devise a workable warp drive. For instance, the Alcubierre Froning or Froning White drive, specifically,
which Dave could talk about for this entire episode.
Yeah, developed.
But that'll be on our transportation episode.
Yeah, set of mathematics that's supposed to weed out unwanted time effects. Specifically because they're thinking about this problem, right? If you're moving along space too fast, what happens to the time in which you're experiencing it? And
something physicists use to try to fudge the numbers a bit on their own equations as far as time travel goes is tachyons, or exotic matter of negative mass. You can make a lot of these methods of time travel happen. Tachyons being imaginary particles that move faster than light, that we can't find evidence of and probably don't exist, but if they did.
I think they'd be time-reversed particles, wouldn't they?
one would assume they could move through time.
Yeah.
Geordi must bring up tachyons 500 times.
Yeah. He's seen them on the sensors.
He sees them on the sensors and on the visors.
Yeah, the visors.
And as far as the exotic matter, that's the only thing I could think that red matter in the JJ Star Trek first movie.
It seems like it could be something like that.
Could be something like that. So they do the whip around the sun thing in a couple of episodes of TOS in Assignment Earth and Tomorrow is Yesterday. Tomorrow is Yesterday is a pretty good episode. That's the one where they go back in time and a pilot gets aboard their ship. So they just decide they're just going to jack them into the future. They're just like, well, we can't let you go back now, so you live with us now. Yeah, and then they find out that they actually have to send him back because his son is going to be somebody very important to, like, the space program. So then they're caught in the situation, what do we do? You know, I don't remember how that one ends. We'll come back to that one. Star Trek 4. Star Trek 4, they also do the sun slingshot.
Yeah. And they're deliberately mucking about with the timeline.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, now I remember.
Deliberately stealing two whales.
Now I remember the comparison I wanted to draw between these two.
Okay.
So Tomorrow Yesterday, they're just desperately trying to not fudge up the timeline in any way possible. It's kind of like the don't step on a cockroach thing. So they're trying to be very careful, and they're going about it very sensibly. And then you watch Star Trek 4. Like, if you were to watch that episode and then immediately watch Star Trek 4, you'd be like, are these the same people? Because they do not care at all. They're running through the streets asking for nuclear vessels. They're
they're giving people
calling people a double dumbass on you.
Aluminum.
Yeah, giving away transparent aluminum, which Scotty has the best response ever, which is, how do we know he didn't invent the thing? Meaning, like, wink, wink. He's obviously now going to be the guy who invented the thing. And, you know, you and I knew he was always that guy. And it's,
they are all together reckless and crazy in that movie.
Yeah.
It makes for good comedy, and I think the point of those scenes is that it was a more lighthearted comedic take on what was going on.
I love that.
Yeah, movie. It doesn't lend itself well to a sort of rigorous Starfleet view of what's going on.
Another way we see time travel used in Star Trek is the Guardian of Forever.
Oh yeah, great episode. It shows up in the animated series too.
Yeah, in Yesteryear.
Yep.
Yeah, and so the Guardian of Forever originated in City on the Edge of Forever. One of the best TOS episodes, I think. Episode of Star Trek.
Incredible.
Just incredible, yeah. Written by Harlan Ellison. Edith Keeler must die.
Yep, Edith Keeler must die. Yeah, it's a really thoroughgoing meditation on sort of the ethical limits of these travelers and the inequities of historical position, almost, you know? And I think, if I remember right, McCoy remarks upon that at various points, that, you know, if this were in their day, she would not end up dead out. And it's crushing it.
I mean, it's very of its day. They've only known each other for a little while, and he just comes in, Spock, I think I'm in love with Edith Keeler.
Oh, God.
It's like, of course you are, Jim. Of course you are, Jim. But the Guardian Forever, at best guess, seems like a wormhole. Mm-hmm. Like you kind of go in the entry point and come out somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, in some ways, it bears, I think, a kind of predecessor relationship to what we see in the technology of the Iconians.
The gateways.
And they seem to bear a resemblance to each other.
Like a sentient version of one of their gateways or something.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah. But it's one of those lovely things where they do refer to the kind of deep time of the galaxy and the many, many, many civilizations and cultures that have arisen and disappeared over time. But the Guardian of Forever is something that, you know, they actually strike up kind of a relationship with in odd ways.
And I'm glad you brought up Yesteryear, too, from the animated series. Because I really love that episode. That's the one where Spock uses the Guardian of Forever, or the whole away party does, and Spock just doesn't come back. When they come back through, he's just going to... So he's actually back on Vulcan during his childhood, before he's about to go on his Vulcan rite of passage trip into the desert with no supplies sort of thing, survive.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of some of the practices that the ancient Spartans had with their youth and some of that kind of stuff, where, kind of rites of passage in that kind of society, right? But he gets into trouble up there.
He gets into trouble, yeah. They're hunted by a big Vulcan cat, some sort of weird creature.
Yeah.
But he has his pet with him. His name's like T'Chaya or something, the pet. And young Spock remembers his older self as a cousin from a distant part of Vulcan that he doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows up to save himself from dying. This is a save yourself from dying in the past paradox kind of episode.
Yeah.
And he does interfere, but due to his interference, there's a change in the timeline where this time his beloved pet is killed by the creature that was hunting them. So Spock obviously feels guilty due to their interference with time with the Guardian of Forever, leading to the premature death of his own pet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a really kind of heartfelt episode, and I like that one a lot.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful... And it gives you a really interesting kinds of insight into Spock's relationships to his own parents.
Mm.
Yeah.
And most recently, the Guardian of Forever comes up in Discovery, which I won't say too much because Dave hasn't gotten that far yet.
This is the newest season, is it?
Yes, this is the newest season. But suffice it to say, there's been a slight evolution in the Guardian of Forever, where, as we were saying, it's like a sort of a sentient gateway. It sort of evolves on that idea a little bit.
Oh, I'll be interested to see what a kind of twist that is.
Yeah, I'll say no more, but...
Say no more, not as good as a wink to a blind bat.
Now, another different approach to a time travel episode is deliberately trying to change the present, such as in yesterday's Enterprise, where, due to the time travel event in the first place, it sets the timeline different and things are a lot worse for the Federation, but they're actively taking the stance that they are going to try to alter the past to affect their own present. Which is certainly not something you often see a Starfleet captain make such a decision.
True. And I don't think it's easily arrived at either. Yeah, yesterday's Enterprise sticks out. It's revealing in a couple of ways. It reveals things about Guinan that we hadn't known before, and that very mysterious El-Arian species that she comes from.
Another wormhole situation, I believe.
Yeah. The decision to put Tasha Yar on that ship to me is really fascinating because there's no reason for her to go with them other than her own desire and her knowledge that in the other timeline she's not there. That kind of sort of multi-temporal awareness or intuition that Guinan seems to have is part of what pulls them through that. But it's almost like this perspective that's slightly out of time or slightly beyond time, in some sense, and points to a real depth in their perception of reality that is probably very difficult to communicate to human beings.
Time Zero. It's a time travel episode.
It is. Another great one with Guinan in it.
Mm-hmm.
A good two-parter. That was a season ender, season beginner, wasn't it? Was that 6 into 7 or 5 into 6, maybe, with TNG?
Yeah, I think 6 into 7, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, we get Sam Clemens.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good old Mark Twain.
Mark Alimo playing a poker hustler.
Oh, yeah. Another one of those great repeat shower-uppers on Star Trek, Like
I'll give you $3 for it.
I liked the sort of conceit of the episode that these are sort of metaphysical.
They find Data's head.
Creatures.
That's where it all kind of kicks off. They find Data's head in a cave.
Yeah.
They're like, it's been here for hundreds of years. Well, he's also up on the ship.
How does this work? And his head catches up to them, right?
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I really like. So ultimately, there's only one Data head.
Yeah.
But for a very brief time, in 2369 or 2368, there are 2 Data heads.
Yeah. Data heads show up everywhere, as we've seen in Star Trek Nemesis as well.
Well, that's also true. Yeah.
You can find them
sometimes in a drawer.
Washed up on a beach.
Good old Data heads.
Good old beach Data heads.
Yeah. Just got gobs of them around the back.
It also just goes to show you how old El-Arians can get, and Guinan's pre-interest in Earth.
Yeah.
She was there a long time ago.
Well, if she was there in the 19th century, she's at least 500 years old. And Guinan does not look like she's anybody's fool in the 19th century either. She's clearly got a spaceship stashed somewhere.
Yeah, so she's probably another 100 years old.
One imagines, yeah. I mean, who knows how long it's actually been around. And what kind of a perspective that would give her on relationship, friendship. When she says that she and Picard go beyond friendship.
It makes you wonder not just where they met, but when.
Yeah. Like, under what circumstances did they come into
Picard go back in time?
Yeah.
I think there's a book that covers that, actually.
Oh, is there? I haven't read that.
Yeah, I think so. Me neither. Perhaps we'll read it and review it one day.
Ooh.
We'll review that Deep Space Nine Too Long a Sacrifice comic at the end of the episode today. So as not to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it yet, you can just stop listening to us. You can enjoy the rest of this episode and just stop listening to us before the review.
Yeah, don't stop listening now.
No, don't stop listening now. We're going to talk about time loops because we have a particular expertise in time loops.
Star Trek does too.
Yeah. Cause and effect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Ship goes splody a few times.
It's all about Data's pips on his collar or something, isn't it, in the end?
No, the pips on Riker's collar. They put the number 3 into his mind. And because everyone on the bridge made a suggestion. He's like, the 3 made me think that it was Commander Riker's suggestion we should follow. Because every other time they didn't, because Commander Riker doesn't always have the best ideas on the bridge.
That's true.
He's just more of the, well, I never heard of that kind of guy on the bridge sometimes. So Data always interjected every time. It's just like, no, but if I do this, we might be able to get out of the way just in time.
Yeah.
Splody splodes.
That also shows, has Kelsey Grammer in it. I think that episode does somehow.
Oh, is he the cause of the time loop? Is that the one with that ship?
Yeah, I think so, because they've experienced a problem, and I think it's destabilizing time around.
Because they were also caught in a time loop.
Yeah, so their exiting from it, I think, keeps destroying the Enterprise. Because they come out and smash into each other again and again and again and again, right?
I read a comic that has a short story in it that is just about him coping with now being in the future. Kelsey
really?
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
It's an interesting little story.
Because they've come from...
He's not taking it well.
They've come from quite a while back, haven't they?
Yeah. Kirk's time, I think, or maybe
I think so. They're in a Miranda-class ship, I remember that.
And then another time loop episode is Visionary, where the Chief is caught in a time loop, or he's what essentially ends up amounting to a time loop, where he's sort of time displaced. It's not the same event happening over and over again, at least as far as he's concerned. It's the same events happening, but he's not caught in the same set of actions each time, and he's remembering each one and trying to solve the mystery of how to stop this event from happening. And then he has to watch another time-displaced version of himself die. Tell Keiko I love. Very sad.
Oh, yeah.
More of a time shift, that one, than a loop.
Well, I mean, the looping is his experience of, that sort of displacement as a continuous back and forth. And in that sense, his sort of back and forth there almost mirrors the way we see Picard moving around through time in All Good Things. There's a kind of resemblance there for me. I do need to correct myself. I apologize. Kelsey Grammer did show up as Captain Morgan Bateson, but he's showing up on the USS Bozeman, a Soyuz class.
Oh, it's Soyuz class, not a Miranda.
I apologize. That's my oversight there.
For you Miranda fans out there, we deeply apologize.
I do love Miranda.
I like a Miranda class myself.
Miranda fans too. No problem.
We do.
Good.
Soyuz, nice too. Nice ships. We'll get into the ships more in another episode as well.
Underslung nacelles are just a lovely thing.
All good things.
Oh, yeah, all good things. Jeepers.
That's just a time adventure, that one.
Yes. And I love Q's reappearance in that to sort of cap off the series. The moment, I think one of my favorite, really memorable moments in that episode is where...
Him putting his hand in the goo and saying, "This is you, Picard?"
Well, that's a good one. But the moment that there's, I think it's a great big Klingon ship coming this way, maybe a Vorchak class, and then the Enterprise with that huge sort of almost like spinal mount phaser lance thing under the bottom of it comes up from beneath and just shoots through. And I thought, thank you. Perfect. Now you're sort of positioning these things not just on a plane with each other, but showing that they're really the freedom of movement that you could get in the free fall of vacuum is really, really cool.
Yeah. Something they started to show a bit more of in the ship scenes in Deep Space Nine.
Yep. They don't always take advantage of those kind of dynamics as well, but they do get better at it over time. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Voyager.
It's always been more of this naval kind of take.
Yeah, but in some sense,
and it's satisfying to see the two ships just facing each other as opposed to being all upside down and opposed to one another that way.
I can see a certain psychological realism there too. That ultimately you kind of you point yourselves at each other.
You kind of would.
You'd want to establish some up and down or something like that, right? If you could visually sort of establish an up and down about another ship.
Wouldn't it be funny if the view screen came through on whatever angle they were at, though?
Mark Leonard's head poking in at a 35-degree angle, talking to Kirk.
Gowron yelling, but he's upside down and slightly to the left.
His mouth is not moving like his words are.
No.
That might make it a bit goofy.
There's nothing goofy about Gowron.
Glory to you and your house.
Pope Gowron.
Did you just say Pope Gowron?
No, I said vote Gowron.
Vote Gowron for Pope.
Well, I think in Time Zero, one of the things that I can't quite remember the method of time travel, but I believe there was Kemocite in those caves. And Kemocite comes up a lot as a time travel-y device, MacGuffin in Star Trek as well.
Yeah.
In one of my, and I believe one of your favorite episodes from Deep Space Nine, Little Green Man.
Oh, gosh.
That's from the Kemocite that Quark is smuggling.
That's right, because Nog is going to Starfleet Academy.
Yeah, and he has the new ship from Cousin Gala, which of course is sabotaged, because Cousin Gala wants to kill Quark sometimes.
This week he does. And that again has another great callback to another Deep Space Nine time travel episode. Past tense.
Past tense.
It's just a throwaway line right at the beginning as they're sort of heading toward Earth and they just see Gabriel Bell. They say, doesn't he look an awful lot like Commander Sisko? All humans look alike. Oh, for Renki.
But past tense is fantastic. It's interesting how Star Trek can go back into the past, but it's still in our future. Like Little Green Men, it's fun seeing the Ferengi run around on an air base.
Yeah, outside Roswell.
Right outside Roswell, yeah.
And, that's a lovely look back at the kind of world that Trek itself originally came out of. That kind of post-World War II landscape. But also, the way that the running contrast between Ferengi culture and human culture in that episode is both funny but also kind of delightful in that we get to see the Ferengi point of view a little bit more on their own history, and that they're in fact proud that they managed to spread out into the galaxy without having a lot of wars and doing any of those sorts of things. They just went out there and they did business. Whereas lots of other species, humans included, nearly annihilated themselves on their own planet before they got even out into space very far.
War is good for business, but not if you're the one in the war.
That's true. That's probably when peace is good for business.
So peace is good for business. I think we can do business with you Martians. Ferengi, whatever. Just look, we can't do... We could do business with the Russians, but I'd rather deal with you Australians, Americans, whatever. Neither of these two sides care about the details too much.
Not too much. No.
Little Green Men brings us to our second annual What If?
We've been doing it for years.
Our next What If, which is, what if Quark, Nog, Rom, and Odo remained trapped in the past on Earth.
The late 40s, early 50s, eh? Wow. Well.
We could take this one at a time.
I mean...
What's Quark doing?
Oh, gosh. Quark, I think, very quickly finds a way to blackmail one of the people on the base into setting him up a shop, especially when...
Likely that couple he was already manipulating.
Right? Especially when a story comes out in the newspaper that says, we've got an alien crash, and then is quickly, hours or only the next day later, retracted saying, no, it was a weather balloon. That, to me, would just smell of latinum on the air to Quark.
or these quaint dollar things that the humans like to play with. I think that's what Quark would be doing. He would be slowly taking over the human economy.
I agree. Slowly taking over the human, maybe not so slowly taking over the human economy. Like, he's already got his eye on cigarettes, like in tobacco.
He's in it for the umaks.
And, he'll find a way to keep the heat off tobacco for a lot longer, too. No big warnings on the packs or anything.
Shining lights and flashing noises. It'll be great.
Yeah, and then I think Quark would probably get into oil.
Oh, yeah.
The stock market. It'd probably be called the Quark market.
The securities and Quark exchange.
Securities. How about Rom?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think he'd end up being one of Quark's employees. Maybe if he could get away, start a little, tinkerer's shop on the side. Because he really has pretty simple pleasures, Rom, Might try and find a nice human girl.
I could see that.
Yeah.
So I think Nog, because there's no Starfleet, it's even too early to even think about starting it himself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he has to get into business as well. But, it's Nog. I think he gets into more reputable business.
Okay.
And I think Rom ends up working with Nog and not Quark. Quark basically takes over the world.
Well, it would be like, what's that book? The Day After Roswell by Colonel Philip Corso, retired. It's this book that came out after his death. Now, he was a highly decorated military officer and had been important in post-war Italy as a liaison with the Pope in Rome, and had done various military intelligence and all sorts of other things. After the war, ends up at a number of bases, both in the U.S. and in Germany, but the book he writes, The Day After Roswell, really concerns this period he writes about between 1961 and 63, where his job under a General Trudeau is to farm out to industrial developers in the American marketplace pieces of technology that were trying to be reverse engineered from the craft that was recovered at Roswell. And so this is what he writes about. It's I don't think it's ever not been an uncontroversial book since it was published, because it has claims that people find frankly difficult to accept, and the whole thing flirts with such profound histories of misinformation and disinformation, of sort of secrecies and lies and speculation and all that stuff, that it's one of those places that straddles the line between knowability and falsifiability, where there's anything really to grasp there. But I wonder if Quark wouldn't have gotten basically into that business himself, because for Corso, the aliens they find, or the drone things they find, are already deceased or soon are deceased. If the alien sticks around and decides, with an advanced knowledge of interstellar finance, to begin messing with your market economics, there's not much you're going to be able to do about that in the short term, right? He's got a computer on that thing and you don't. So, I suppose the remaining question might be, what about Odo?
See, that's the boring one, I think. He just leaves and tries to find the Great Link.
You think so?
He can fly off into space whenever he wants. Well, he follows Quark around and spies on him and tries to govern Quark until he gets bored of it. Yeah, and then he goes and finds the Great Link.
I suppose eventually he'll figure out how to turn into something that can leave orbit, won't he?
Oh yeah, shape change into a rocket ship.
That's true.
Or, he could shape change himself onto one of the early Earth spacecraft or something to get himself.
Oh, that's true. We're missing a food packet, guys. Where did that thing go? Oh, yeah. That'd be quite something.
All hail the great Quark.
Yeah, human history would be profoundly different.
It's so fun.
Yeah, indeed.
Dabo!
He might just conquer the world with Dabo, honestly.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, he's in a casino game for sure.
Oh, Quark in Las Vegas. Hey, Pally.
Oh, Quark Vegas? Quark Negus?
New Quarksville. United States of Quark.
United, that sounds like a union.
That's true. The conglomerate states of Quark. Incorporated states of Quark.
There we
That's
go.
it.
And
LLC.
that's the perfect place to end this What If.
Past tense takes us into actually our near present future.
Yeah, what was
2022.
it? Yeah. How are those sanctuary districts coming along?
Yeah, no kidding, eh?
Here the construction's been underway for a few years.
Massive unemployment and all sorts of things happening here, you know. And then that's the situation in past tense, right? A situation of massive unemployment following economic collapse and
an unwillingness to make the changes to improve the situation when it's easier to just put the problem behind a wall.
Yeah, those, you know, any words in those phrases are pretty pertinent right now. And that's a really, to me, it's eerie that as we approach the year in which past tense is set, we only ever more closely resemble that situation, you know? Even more than in, 2000 when it came out. 20 years later, we're a hell of a lot closer to it than we thought we would be.
Unfortunately, one of the many predictive episodes and aspects of Star Trek.
Yeah.
They've done it before and they'll do it again.
Yeah, it's true. Time doesn't have a non-dynamic relationship to that show.
Also, it's Clint Howard.
That's true. Clint Howard.
He shows up in Star Trek a lot. Plays a Ferengi in Enterprise.
Yeah.
Plays the little kid that drinks the Tranya.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
in the TOS.
Yeah, that's true. He's been associated with Trek for an awful long time. Has a great role in that episode, though.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. You're one of the good aliens. Gotta watch out for those bad aliens. They'll suck your brains right out your ears. They weren't just putting the unemployed behind the walls. Like, they were putting the people with mental illness into the sanctuary districts.
Yeah. And which we disproportionately do in prisons today.
Yeah.
You know, since we have very little in the way of adequate mental health strategies available to us at a sort of, you know, government policy level. Mind you, Starfleet has random counselors on their ships, so I don't know how much mental health has really grown that much in that time. Maybe that more reflects our own sense of being at a loss as to what to do with that and what they'll do with it in the future, you know?
Trials and tribulations.
Which you know, it answers a certain question for us. Since the Federation knows how to do time travel,
Yep.
how the hell do they regulate it?
The time cops. No, the time...
The Department of Temporal Investigations.
Yes, temporal investigations.
Yeah.
You guys are always on time? They hate that joke.
Oh, they're deliciously humorless.
I could have seen a few more episodes on temporal investigations, too. Those two guys. Those two guys were funny.
Oh, they would have been just a great little short spin-off.
You're not saying this is one of those predestination paradoxes that you were meant to go back in the past? No, not at all. Good. I hate those.
That's another one of those episodes where, I mean, DS9 kind of hits a high for me. I mean, in terms of, you know, technical prowess, inserting their actors into, you know, sort of authentic footage.
They stretched the technology on hand at the time, that's for sure.
Oh, man. Just incredible.
Yeah, that episode won a big award.
Well, it ought to.
Yeah, it did. I forget.
We're amazing on the details.
We're amazing on details about award shows.
Yeah, I watch all of them. You know, the hammies and the blobs, all of them. Yeah, Trials and Tribulations, though, is I mean, it's one of those whimsical episodes that DS9 occasionally would come up with, but really allows them to just sort of play with a cast that by that point had become so good at working together that you could just sort of give them sandwich meat and they would make an excellent piece of TV out of it.
It's true.
And, I mean, I'm not saying that the script for Trials and Tribulations is sandwich meat. I just mean that given basically any material.
No, there were a lot of tribbles. They could have made a lot of sandwiches.
That's true. I always wondered what tribble tasted like.
Chicken?
The chicken of the space.
The Klingons probably just don't like the taste of tribble.
They had a great galactic war against the tribbles, didn't they?
Many a hero was sung about after that great campaign to the tribble home world.
And honestly, it's one of those great Star Trek jokes that the
Many
Klingons just have
honorable
this,
deeds
like,
were done that day.
insane killing rage about basically Furbies. slightly oversized meeples.
We mentioned temporal investigations. So even by the time of Deep Space Nine, Starfleet is already, or I don't think they're a branch of Starfleet, probably a branch of the Federation.
More likely,
yeah. They're already thinking about that, and they're already active. They already have active departments related to time travel.
Mm-hmm.
Where we get to see in Voyager how that sort of evolves in episodes like Relativity and Future's End, where they have time ships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The time ship Relativity, Captain Braxton.
Yeah. Well, I think in some ways that probably sets up the kind of Enterprise J shots that we get later on in Enterprise. You know, what's his name?
Daniels.
That's right.
Yeah, well, then even that would be probably even a bit further into the future than Braxton.
Maybe,
I think. Good episodes, though. The Future's End is interesting. It's kind of like past tense, but they just go back a little further, where rather than being 30 years in the future, it was just modern day at the time. They went back to whenever the episode was filmed, the 90s.
Yeah, 98 or 99.
Yeah, something like that.
Early 2000s.
You can see Sarah Silverman in that episode.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm. I think that was her first acting role.
Oh, interesting.
Good character. She could have made the list earlier.
That's true.
One-off characters.
That's true. Voyager does an enormous amount of stuff with time. I mean, that's something to put out there right off the bat. You know, the number of time loops that they ran into, or temporal singularities, or quantum singularities that put them in a time loop.
Like they say in those episodes, she's a menace. Like, the most infractions since Kirk. Surprised those two never crossed paths time hopping.
That's true.
Oh, Kirk? Oh, yeah, I met him back in 2073.
That's right. We were both on Vulcan for a couple of days. Well, you know, one of the great Voyager episodes dealing with time travel that isn't sort of related to kind of getting Voyager home has got to be Year of Hell. The Krenim time ships are...
Time is a weapon.
Time ship. Yeah, like it's a fiendish procedure that they undertake. And again, another great character portrayed by, now I've lost his name, guy who played Red on that 70s show.
Kurtwood Smith.
Kurtwood Smith, that's right.
Anorax is the character. Yeah.
What a great character.
What an interesting concept for a ship, too, where he sees himself, and his philosophy, too. He sees himself as being separated from this time because in that ship they are safe from the passage of time and they don't age, but they still feel time go by. The rest of his crew are tired of it. They've been doing this same thing over and over again for hundreds of years, and they felt the passage of that time because they're bored of it happening over and over again, of doing the same
except
thing
that they're always in the same moment.
But they're always in the same moment.
Yeah, so they're not aging. They're not
aging. They're just living.
Maybe
Maybe
they're sort of undead at that point.
But their consciousness is at least repeating tasks over and over again, enough to make them tired of it. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying in terms of undead is I don't know if I would call that. You know, they have no quality of life. No,
all they have is an indefinite quantity of it, and that's got to bring your sort of enjoyment of it down to near zero in every moment. Like what a bleak hell they have thrust themselves into, and then they just inflict it on everyone else by denying them existence. That part to me is like, that's the truly fiendish part, that they'll just make it that you never really were, and then maybe you were this week, but now you're gone, now you're back, now you're different, now you're this. The sense of being prey, of being occupied, of being just the plasticine of somebody else's whims, because they do meet species that are conscious of what's going on. You know, last week we had starships. This week we're in the Stone Age or something, or whatever it is, you know. But in a certain way, it draws out the notion of obsession that we see as well reflected in sort of Cisco living in one instant of time. And it's a different kind of twist on that, you know, where the obsession is actually about reconstituting the right moment of time so that that never happens.
The impossible calculation to make among endless strings of possibilities.
Yeah, and thinking we could control all of those threads.
So I think a thread that connects some of the episodes we've been talking about that we could probably speak about directly is like a story device with episodes like Past Tense and Time Zero and episodes like Future's End and even Little Green Men is the idea of being trapped in another time.
Right.
It's not about changing time, being in a time loop. It's just about being trapped in a time that's not your own and having to find a way back.
Right.
That's a story device Star Trek uses a lot. And always good for a fun romp.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, I think you could probably, pick out episodes from almost every series where that's the case. Whether, again, it's Spock being trapped in his own lifetime and having to find some way to save himself in order to get back to the real world, in a way, or the present that he knows, in yesteryear, or whether it's, even this most recent season of Discovery being thrown 900 years into the future, which is, it's an interesting direction for Trek to go in, because we haven't done a whole lot of going to that. We've had lots of folks from the future in everything from Captain's Holiday to, all of the episodes we've already talked about.
Berlinghoff Rasmussen.
But we've had very few trips to the future. In that sense, they're doing a kind of opposite move.
Which is interesting, considering it's, at least in theory, more physically possible to do future time travel than it is to travel into the past. But I guess that's probably why it's not as interesting for storytelling either.
Well, true, and I suppose why you'd pick such a large jump as well.
And of course, you can pick a setting that's known, and rather than have to invent one.
Yeah.
Which is why we love Trek. A nice invented place and time.
Yeah, indeed.
But, on the topic of Janeway being a time menace.
Oh, yeah.
She kind of sums that idea up in the end of that series with Endgame.
Didn't have quite as big an box office pull as Avengers Endgame, but Voyager Endgame was still, pretty big episode.
Still a two-parter.
That's true, still a two-parter. There still might have been a lot of use of the color purple. You never know.
Not a lot of purple that I remember.
There's a lot of gray.
Yeah.
A lot of gray, a lot of
Borgs, a lot of green.
That's true, a lot of green.
A lot of Borg green.
Yeah. But yeah, this is where Janeway uses the future to alter the past.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways Star Trek really approaches the idea of time travel.
What do you make of that episode? How do you...
Whoops. She reset the entire history of the Federation, essentially.
Yep.
I mean, for better or worse. That wasn't clear.
Well, they don't seem to...
Better for Tuvok. I mean, better for certain individuals, but as far as overall, it's hard to tell as far as like a yesterday's Enterprise kind of scenario. How overarching were the effects? And
well, and it's the other thing we don't see on the other side of that is whatever after effects there may have been for the crew. I mean, who knows?
Being the last episode.
Yeah, I mean, who knows whether Janeway didn't get court-martialed and drummed out of Starfleet.
For the actions of her future self?
Or for accepting the help from her future self.
Mm.
I think that would be my angle as a Starfleet JAG officer, if I were going to go that way. That she willingly accepted and became complicit in breaches of the... whatever
the time directive?
Yes, the temporal
the time directive, we'll say.
They'll need to find some sort of time lords to make this... Oh, we fell into the wrong thing.
Well, Starfleet eventually does become Time Lords, as we see in Enterprise.
That's true.
With Cold Front and Storm Front.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got the temporal Cold War at first in Cold Front, where there are some, sneaky spies jumping around.
Mm-hmm.
But no all-out conflict in the Anorak sense.
Yeah. But Stormfront just...
Stormfront, we have that. We have...
cracks it wide open.
We have Time War.
Yeah. I mean, that could be a whole other subtopic on this podcast, would be Trek's various uses of Nazis.
Well, I think that's bringing us to the end of our time travel journey through the history of Star Trek.
That's right. Brings us up to present.
Guess it's a good time to do our spoiler-filled review of Deep Space Nine comic from IDW.
Yeah, aptly named Too Long a Sacrifice.
Too Long a Sacrifice. The release of this comic wasn't a coincidence. That came out shortly after the death of Reneo Bourgeois.
Indeed.
As this is an Odo-centric story.
Oh, it's a great story. I think this would have made one of the great DS9 episodes had it been filmed.
I think it would have been a fantastic episode as well.
Yeah, it's the story hinges around that sort of seminal moment where I sort of set somewhere, I'm guessing, in around season 6, where the Federation is on their back foot, the 10th Fleet has been caught out of position, and the Dominion has been able to assault and conquer Beta Z.
Mm-hmm.
And that planet is now under full occupation by the Cardassians, who are building a Terok Nor style station above the planet to harvest its natural resources. And through the original, the original character for these stories, who muses on it, who is a Betazoid, operative of the Federation Security Service, Federation Investigative Service, they're actually called. And he comes in to assist Odo, who's having trouble in an investigation of various murders that have occurred at the station, which begin when Garrick and Bashir are having lunch at a restaurant on the promenade.
Mm-hmm.
There's an explosion, a number of people are killed. Bashir and Garrick themselves are quite badly wounded. The restaurant is destroyed, and this sets in motion a chain of events that leaves bodies all over the station, and...
There's a mystery afoot.
Indeed, the game is afoot.
Mm-hmm.
Ferengi dying all over the place.
Ferengi dying, yeah. So all these different governments of the different victims of the explosion are very anxious for details, and they're hassling Cisco, who's hassling Odo for details. And as we know, Odo doesn't like to work in tandem. He likes to do his own thing, so he has to work with this Betazoid guy.
Yeah, he's kind of a complex character in his own right. You know, he bears a real wariness around him about Odo because of the occupation of Beta Z by the Founders through their Cardassian allies. And the cruelty they inflict on his people is something he explicitly says he doesn't hold Odo responsible for, but he does continue to challenge Odo's methods and his ability as an investigator in ways that make it clear that he is sort of grinding an axe, nevertheless, in a certain degree, you know? And, you know, it's hard to fault him for it. Everybody's in a bad space there.
It's a compelling character. Any thoughts on, if it were an episode, which actor would play that role? I have a thought on that. I was thinking the actor who played Kivas Fajo on TNG, Saul Rubinek.
Oh, he would have been good for that. He would have been very interesting in that. I would also have, there was a guy who was working on Law and Order at the time, who played, what's his name, Lenny?
I don't know, I didn't watch Law and Order.
I think he was he was a sort of a wisecracking New York cop guy who'd been always talking about his various ex-wives. But he has a face and a voice, and I think I've seen him in other things where he could have pulled that character off beautifully. I don't remember what his name is now. Yeah, he would have been great. Although now that you've said Saul Rubinek, I kind of want to see him play that. He'd be great in that.
He's good at playing a multi-layered character.
Yeah, I think he could have done that quite beautifully.
Now, spoiler alert, turns out the owner of the restaurant blew up her own shop. You blew up your own shop, Garrick?
Which Odo comments on in an earlier place. He says, you know, Garrick could have blown up this restaurant with himself in it.
Yeah.
He's done it before.
He's done it before.
And it's a great red herring in the story. Because you think, well, yeah, of course, yeah, but Garrick didn't do this. That's what you're telling me now. But you never really... They're very deft about not overplaying their hand and saying, well, maybe somebody else did that.
As with a lot of classic Deep Space Nine, they don't mind if you suspect Garrick or Quark for a different...
No, that's true. For a good chunk of the story,
You just...
and her desire to do these crimes is long-standing. It's about revenge. It's about grief. It's about outrage, again, of an occupied people. Against their occupiers and the people who aided and abetted them in particular. So she's really more...
She's Bajoran.
Yeah, she's Bajoran, and in some ways she's almost more angry at the collaborators because she saw them day to day than she is at the Cardassians with whom they were collaborating. And that's a theme that runs really strongly through Deep Space Nine, and is borne out in, you know, the history of post-war Europe, for instance. You know, Vichy collaborators and others were, you know, they were not beloved after the war. You know, And that kind of ill will, given the kind of extreme experience people have, it goes a long way to explain how people get to those spaces. But it doesn't justify all of the horrific things this restaurant owner does in pursuit of vengeance, to my mind.
I really think you were right about it. Would have been one of the great episodes of Deep Space Nine. The way the comic really wants you to draw the parallel between Occupied Bajor and Occupied Beta Z. Because Deep Space Nine does a great job of fleshing out what Occupied Bajor was like and how horrible that was and the effects that's having on Bajorans and still so many years later.
Yeah.
This comic really wants you to really start to think of Beta Z on those terms. Like, this is what's happening on what would have been thought of in the TNG era as a safe haven.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when we see Beta Z in Menage a Troy, it's just
pretty much a paradise.
It's a paradise world, But it really, when you look at the maps of those sectors, it's 10 light years from Cardassian space, no more. It's not much further from Cardassian space than Bajor is from Cardassia itself. I mean, they're around a sort of curve of their space sector. There's Bajor, Calandra, and then down here somewhere. But they're not far. They were a safely ensconced Federation world, and who before the Dominion War was really going to pick on the Federation on that side? That's a terrible idea.
Kind of brings up something Kai Wynn said one time. He's like, well, what if the threat was to a place like Beta Z or Berengaria? Or it's like, well, we see it was occupied for some time. They didn't just go storming in and take back Beta Z.
No, it was occupied for a good 2 years, I think. Yeah, or a year and a half anyway.
Yay or nay, recommend Too Long a Sacrifice.
Absolutely recommend. I think that's a great story. The art is great.
Yeah,
they captured Garrick's face in particularly good, vivid detail. But yeah, the art's well done overall. I could hear all the characters' voices as I was reading, and it felt very natural. And when that happens in a story, to me, it really comes to life. Good writing, good scripting, good art. Yeah, good comic.
Well, should we close this chapter or travel back to the start and try it again?
Oh, no, I'm done with loops.
Yeah, okay, me too. I'm done with loops as well. So we'll bring this to a close. Next time you hear from us, it will be a mini episode on Far Beyond the Stars.
The award-winning Deep Space Nine episode.
That we think could warrant a little bit of discussion outside of a main theme discussion. And our next main episode, our theme will be transportation. Not through time so much, but through space.
And so, say goodbye for now. We'll hope that our paths cross again. End transmission.
Do you think it's possible Vic doesn't like us?
You think so?
I mean, he called us pallies.
Calls everybody pally.
That's true.
I mean, it's because he asked us to leave.
Well, he skipped the jam. Didn't want us to join the band. Said
Yeah, he didn't
have
really
room
answer.
for two Tailors in a band. Like, what does that mean?
How could... I mean...
He's just so
Oh,
great.
Vic likes everybody.
Yeah, Vic's great. We're just being self-conscious.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that must be it.
Maybe he wants to jam next week.
There's only one way to find out.